Here we go. Tour of the senses. See, hear, feel, special exercise. So just to get started, this is going to be an open-eyed meditation, so it's okay. At some point, we might close them. It's part of the process. But for now, I just invite you to maybe just take a nice deep breath and exhale, and then just settle into position. It's preferable to sit upright if you can do that. But if that's not available to you, you just do your best, make do. All right. So, as mentioned in an introduction, we're going to be touring the senses of see, hear, and feel. So, let's go ahead and get started. Wherever you're at, I'm going to go ahead and turn it face out a little bit so I have something actually to see. I invite you to do the same if you have an environment that's conducive to that, or you can always just observe the screen, but whatever works best for you. And we're just going to acknowledge and notice what we see. It may sound very simple. Um, But it's interesting that we never just try to narrow our attention down to just sight. So, with that in mind, just notice what you see in front of you. And you can dial in on one thing or a small group of things, or maybe you can kind of open up your focus and take in maybe a whole segment of your visual field or the entire thing. Maybe you can notice your entire visual field, kind of all the way back to where it disappears somewhere in the periphery. All of this area that we see in front of us is the sea of the see here field. It's just this range of vision that there is. So whether we're dialed into one thing, our eyes are moving around from thing to thing, or we're just kind of an open aperture, taking it all in and relaxing and resting into it. That's the C sensory category. See out to be specific. And then I'd like you to go ahead and if you're comfortable with it, close your eyes. Now notice if you're still looking, if you're still paying attention to what you see, there might be something there, something to see. So this is still part of that see sensory experience. You're still noticing what you see. You're still paying attention to sight. It's just that that's turned to this internal aspect of vision. In my case, I just kind of see a darkness and some amorphous blobs of colors of yellows and oranges and reds. But that might be happening for you, or you might have a completely different visual experience. And maybe notice, does it feel like you're kind of looking towards the front of your head? Or maybe you have like a visual screen somewhere that senses seems in the middle, or maybe that visual screen's in the back of your mind. Wherever it arises, it doesn't matter. We're just noticing. We're noticing how it shows up. And again, if you find yourself kind of concentrating or bearing down to see this, let's just go ahead and relax. We're just resting into that visual field, however it is, and allowing it. And you can apply the same concepts of narrowing in on something within the visual field or opening up to the expansiveness of it all. Either way, I recommend you just kind of rest into whatever visualizations are popping up. Just noticing. Sometimes when we're doing different techniques, we'll even use a label to acknowledge what sensory category our attention is at that given moment. In this case, you could gently say to yourself, um, see. You can say it out loud or just in your uh, inner voice. see. And it just helps kind of reinforce our attention is on what we see right now. And now let's go ahead and transition to hear, the second category. And you can keep your eyes closed or open them if you like, but either way, we're not going to be paying attention to what we see. Let's transition our attention to what we hear. And you may notice that as opposed to the sight of kind of the 180 visual field in front of you, hearing has more of a full 360 sensory experience going on. So you can hear things behind you, in front of you, off in the distance, right next to you, next to your ear, 100 yards away, off in the distance. And just listening to all those things, there's kind of this space within which we hear everything, and it extends out in all directions. And you can use the label here if you want to just kind of reinforce if your mind starts to wander. We're listening to all the noises out and around. And maybe you've chosen to do this practice somewhere where it's very quiet. So there's not anything to hear. That's okay. We're still listening. We're still paying attention to the hear sensory category. There's just a lack of sensory input, if that makes sense. There's not a lot to hear, but we're still listening. We're listening to the quiet. And you can transition that attention from the external environment of listening to the internal. Do you have an internal dialogue going right now? Do you hear any thoughts popping up? Song playing? Or maybe, as often happens, as soon as we start to listen for our thoughts, it goes quiet. This is also the hear category, whether there's activity or not. As long as we're listening, we're hearing, it's the hear category, whether there's sensory experience happening or not. We're paying attention to what we hear. Next, we're just going to transition from listening to feeling. Maybe check in and notice if you have any emotions right now, maybe nervousness or confusion or peace and joy because of the concentration we've been applying and resting into or relaxing into. Whatever you can kind of feel any emotions. And if you can't feel any emotions or you can't tell if it's emotions or heartburn, it's all good. We're just trying to pay attention, right, to what we feel emotionally. You don't have to define it either. You just notice it, whatever it is. And just kind of observe it as relaxed as you can, kind of relaxing into it, getting to know it or soaking into the experience. It's the feel in. And now let's transition to feel out. Feel out is, of course, smells and tastes, as I previously mentioned. So you might smell the freshness of the air or the stale air, or you might feel the chair beneath you or a cushion, or you're resting up against a wall or a chair back, or there's a breeze or a dryness of your skin or an itch or tickle. Any physical sensation is also the feel category. And just like with the vision and the hearing, you can dial in on one small finite area, or you can kind of expand your attention out, kind of zooming out to the whole felt experience of your body and your presence. But you're just noticing what you feel and tracking and exploring it. Now, wherever you're at, we can just let go of that, and we're gonna start to wrap it up there. If your eyes are closed, you can open them at this time. And that was that. See, hear, feel tour of the senses. So hopefully you got a taste of each sensory category, an external component and an internal component. And we're going to use that going on the rest of the week. A little less guidance and a little more pointing towards these experiences. So hope you liked it. Look forward to seeing you on day 2. Um, that's it. Aloha. Thanks for joining me. Mahalos.